Hey guys, if you want to keep up with the Melon Party and everything we're doing, you can follow us on Facebook or Instagram under the Melon Party name.
Or you can reach us on the Melon Party hotline, 317-520-3168. Or shoot us over an email at themelonpartypod@gmail.com.
Now, let's party.
Yo, I was in the shower. Call me back.
What's up, guys? I'm Josh.
I'm Jared.
And as always, we got the man behind the curtain, BJ. What's up, BJ?
What's up, BJ?
So we got another guest today. This is our first stand-up comedian, shockingly.
Nice.
For how the fans,
Excited.
big of fans we are of comedy and stuff
I
like
know.
that, and BJ being a stand-up comedian and a host and a producer. But yeah, another guy that I found scrolling the webs, saw a video, cracked up, hit the follow button, been following him since. So we got today we got stand-up comedian Jimmy Draxler. What's up, Jimmy?
What's up, guys? How we doing?
Good.
Man.
Appreciate
Welcome
you
to the
being
show,
here, man.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So yeah, we'll start first of all the origin story.
Yeah,
The
tell us a little
origins
bit
of
about
Jimmy.
yourself, man. Where you from?
Yeah,
What you into?
The villain origin story.
Why not?
Yeah, the villain.
Well, I'm originally from Pittsburgh.
Nice, go Steelers.
Played college basketball for a little bit. I don't know if you guys are Midwest, right?
Yeah,
We are,
Indiana.
yeah. Nice.
Yeah. So like, I went to college at Worcester in Ohio, which
Oh, nice. Little
a
small
horrible school to
private
go to. Let me
college.
tell you.
Nice,
And
yeah.
turns out NBA isn't in the market for a 6'2" white kid who can't jump.
Yeah.
So I transferred, went down to University of Miami, and that's like where I kind of started the comedy journey in a way, because.
Nice.
Like I randomly took a screenwriting class,
Okay.
and then my teachers were like, you write really funny, take the next one. So like I kept doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the time I was ready to graduate, I was like, okay, I'm going to go out to LA and see if I can screenwrite.
Yeah.
So did the whole cliche, drive across the country, no money, no job, all that fun stuff, no place
I've
to
made
live,
that
didn't know
drive
anybody in LA.
myself to LA. Yeah.
Ended up working up from like an internship to getting like an assistant job. And so my first assistant job was for this like husband and wife. And let me tell you, a lot of fun just watching those, being in the middle of their arguments and having to pick a side every time. So
Right. Third
The
wheel
monitor,
in a married
moderator or
couple.
whatever. Yeah.
Nice.
yeah, literally every time they're like, who do you pick? And I'm like, fuck, I got to be on the guy's side. He's the one who hired me.
Yeah, right. Who's signing my checks here?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like 22, 23 at the time, and I had written a script and I wanted to see if it was any good. So I just wrote a different name on it and kind of told my boss, like, hey, came across this script, super
Right.
hilarious. Would love to hear your thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So he read it and he was like, called me back like pretty quickly. And he was like, dude, this is fucking hilarious. Who the hell wrote it? Like, I'm interested in buying it. So I'm like sitting there at 22, like,
Yeah.
LA's easy. Like, I don't know what they were talking about, all this grind
Sure.
shit. Like, I already made it. And then, yeah, so I was like, this. But then his wife read it, and she was right. She was like, this, like, you've heard my comedy. It's a little dark, but this was,
Right.
it's not as dark, the script I wrote, but it was like edgy.
Sure.
And they were just like, this isn't going to get made in modern America comedy
Yeah,
type thing. And this was
right.
back in like 2016, 2017.
Sure.
So basically, my boss the guy had kind of said like, hey, like, I've represented comics in the past, like, you should 100% consider doing stand-up comedy, because like, you write really funny. If you could figure out like a stage presence, I think you could be pretty good at it.
Right.
But I had always been kind of like a person who like super introverted, like could never see myself going in front of stage in front of people, never raised my hand in class growing up. Like,
Right.
I was not that person. So
Okay.
like the next like 4 years, I kind of still stayed in the film industry, was trying to break in as a screenwriter,
Mhm.
was working assistant jobs and miserable the entire time. So I
Right.
just kept writing. And then like, I was at a assistant job for like actors,
Mhm.
the worst people in the world. So like that job, I was like so depressed at work. I was like, okay, let me try writing jokes. And then
Yeah.
I started writing jokes, and then I kept like being like, oh, I'm going to go to an open mic this day, and then would bitch out. And then like it kept going and going and going.
Mhm.
And then like my grandpa died. And then after that, I was like, okay, I'm going to go.
Right.
So then I went to this open mic after work, and I drove purposefully. I drove 2 hours away for it, because just in case I did so bad that like someone recognized me
right,
on it, that
see
they never
you,
know
yeah,
like I did
out
it.
of your circle of influence. Amazing.
Yeah, I was like, let me drive. I don't even care about the drive and gas mileage. Like, I'm going as far away as possible to do this thing.
I love that.
And yeah, I went and did it, and it went pretty like well. Where
Sure.
it was just like right after it happened, I was like, oh, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, kind of thing.
Nice.
Yeah, you get that dopamine. You hear that a lot with
Oh,
stand-up comedians about,
and I probably bombed, like looking back on it, but like I heard a few laughs. But
Yeah,
like,
but you felt great.
but it
Get
was
like
enough,
4
it was
laughs.
enough to
You're
keep
like,
me going.
"Hey,
I still remember
laughed."
what my set was about. Like it was
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, you and I have that in common. When I played college basketball too, and you find
Oh,
out
yeah.
that 6'2" white with no real vertical, you know, a pretty decent jump shot, but like it just doesn't cut it.
Only
like,
only takes you so far.
yeah,
Yeah, I realized it in AAU. I was like, I'm just not on this level.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. You find that it's very humbling.
Yeah.
oh yeah.
So you said in, what was it, 16, 17 is about the time you dove and like went into comedy.
No, actually, I was post pandemic. I've been doing comedy about 3.5 years now.
Oh,
Just
okay.
Post-COVID.
So
Yeah.
oh, okay, and that's when
I
you
literally, so basically what happened, I say it started post pandemic, but I technically started like right before the pandemic. I finally did an open mic,
Mhm.
and then the world shut down, and I was
Sure.
like, well, this is obviously a sign that God wants me to do comedy.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
especially with
So
your,
I like,
with your dark
I
sense
got
of
like,
humor.
I was at an assistant job, and I got fired because of the pandemic. Like, well, like let go because they couldn't afford to pay me
Sure,
through the
they laid
pandemic,
everybody off,
Right.
which was actually great because I just like asked for a raise, so like I was able to like
Yeah.
get my pandemic money like way higher. So I just spent the pandemic like writing jokes and stuff for coming back,
Nice.
and then I just jumped right into it.
Well, that's a kind of a fortuitous COVID shutdown for you. Then you're transitioning
Yeah, it was
into
perfect.
your new set way. Plenty
Yeah.
of time to kind of sharpen your skills, so to speak, there at home before the world opened back up. And you could kind of take it at your own pace, I assume, as well. It's not like you'd be inundated and. I think everybody was kind of coming out of COVID, was just kind of like, oh, I remember the world and things.
Yeah.
I guess we'll start going out slowly. I feel like we're just now at like this point kind of getting back to like social life, kind of how it was pre-pandemic. So,
well, and then too,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
it's forcing you to write. It's forcing you to put the focus on that, instead of focusing on trying to pay
you
your
saw
bills.
everybody
and working,
doing that. Like there
it's
was like everybody was making sourdough bread and
Yeah.
videos
Oh, yeah.
and shit. Everybody was transitioning careers. Like I transitioned. I worked in the restaurant for a long time, and it took me a long time to kind of transition out of that. I went into a new career post COVID as well, outside of the restaurants. I feel
Big
like
reset.
a lot of people did that.
yeah, big reset.
Yeah, it was a good time to do it. Yeah, like I was getting paid by the government to write jokes, and I was like, this is the
This
life.
is not
Yeah.
bad. Hey,
Well, and that's what you find out too. You hear a lot about comedians where they kind of dabbled for a few years. It wasn't there's something they found kind of fun. They would go do some open mics, and then there was that moment where they were like, "This is what I'm gonna do," and they put all their focus in on it. And there was a lot of
See, I knew right
struggling.
when I was driving home that day. I was like, oh, this is like exactly what I want to do.
I want
Like,
this.
right off
I want
the bat.
this feeling all the time because you hear a lot of comedians speaking of COVID, like that's what they were missing was just that feeling. That
Yeah,
there's
the
no
live
like
audience,
they could
yeah.
write a TV show or they could do all these or do their podcast, but like getting on stage, that feeling, there's nothing. It's like a drug, So
It really is. Like I get depressed if I have less shows in a week. It's like,
yeah,
it's like it really is a drug. There's like once you're hooked on it, you can't get off.
right. What are some of your like? So were you ever like a fan of comedy? Were there comedians that you liked that kind of helped push
Yeah,
you to
definitely.
that?
I mean, I wouldn't say I was like I wasn't like a student of comedy like growing up. Like my dad would play he would play comedy albums like in the car all the time,
Yeah.
which
Sure.
I didn't realize how much it was sinking in until like later.
Right.
But like people who I like comedy wise, who I didn't really know many even going into it and starting it.
Right.
And then I kind of started studying it a little bit, like listening to different styles and all that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would say like the kind of people who I kind of look up to or like my goats are like obviously Anthony Jeselnik,
Sure.
Jimmy Carr, if you guys know him from the UK.
Love
Yeah.
him. He's the
Jimmy's
best.
And
great.
then I always loved Daniel Tosh's
Yeah.
stand-up.
Sure,
I always, the way he did it, I always thought was smart, and he just
Yeah.
didn't give a fuck.
For
Yeah,
sure.
but it was also, but there was always the joke. It wasn't just him being a dickhead,
Right.
No,
like, and
there's
that's the
always a
big
joke.
difference with
That's like
Tosh, is that he can say something totally. I call him backwards jokes because Jesselnick's the same way, It's where you lead the audience to this punchline where they're like, oh, I know where this is going, and then you just go right with it, and you hit them with it, but it
Hit 'em with
still
the misdirection,
fits within the frame of the joke. It's just a whole other punchline,
Right.
and that's what really got me interested in you, because I immediately thought, I was like, you don't see many people doing Anthony Jeselnik style of these.
It's
these
hard
jokes. It's
to
hard, yeah.
find fans of the darkest of humors
Yeah.
like that, and to go to taboo subjects, like abortion and cancer and race,
or just to
and
take something light
sexuality.
and turn it into super dark.
Especially now in this current climate, you know,
Yeah.
you see you've got like Seinfeld talking about X, Y, and Z and cancel culture, and like everybody's so afraid now that you just like comics such as yourself and the people that you listed are they're targets nowadays. Basically, you know, they're getting a lot more good press, bad press,
Right.
you know, like, and
They get their
it's
past
a different
looked up.
climate out here now, and it's got to be incredibly difficult for comics out there now, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I feel like, I mean, at least like with them, they're kind of grandfathered in. Like
Right.
coming up now, been a
Right.
there's been like people who haven't, but I feel like, I don't know, at least as of recently ish, like I feel like the pendulum's kind of swinging back on all that type of stuff.
I think
like
you're right.
people seem to be like you would think I'd have way more worse shows like doing that dark type of stuff, but
Yeah.
like surprisingly, knock on wood, we'll see, but it hasn't been, there's only been like 2 or 3 really, really rough audiences that have like wanted to kill me, but besides that, like been all right.
Yeah,
One thing-
you're gonna have those.
One thing I like about a lot of because you show a lot of your like jokes and stuff that you've done on stage is like little shorts and reels.
Yeah.
And I love that the when you say the punchline and you get the or the quietness and you thrive in that, like
You
the
embrace
smile on
it.
your face, like it's almost like you would rather have everybody just go quiet and shock than actually laughing, like, because then it's like to you it's like I got him, because some guys need to laugh.
The like
to,
the rolling laughter, it's like where it's like they're so shocked, they're like, oh, and then it sinks in what I just said,
Right.
and then
And
like it
then
like
the
trickles
laughs
in. Those are my
comes.
favorite like
Yeah.
type of jokes
The
where it's just like,
slow
oh
build.
fuck, I gotta laugh at that. That's,
yeah, like it's funny.
Yeah.
It's dark as shit. It's funny. Yeah.
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Okay, that's funny. I'm allowed to laugh at that.
yeah, I always tell like couples at shows, I'm like you guys are gonna learn a lot about each other through my set.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna find out what each other really finds funny.
Absolutely.
Well, and that's
Absolutely.
do you do a lot of crowd work? Because I've seen
Yeah,
a
I've-
little bit, but
Not a ton. Like I try to frame it like within like set, or if something funny pops up kind of thing, or if I see someone making a certain face at like a joke, I'll like address it. But I'm not like a Matt Rife where I'm like
Right.
right, because you
going
see
crowd
that
work.
you see
But I'll
that
try
as,
to.
as almost like a style now, because of like Jay Okerson's
it is.
really good at it.
You're seeing
so
these
it's like
guys blow
yeah,
up on
'cause you used to
Reddit.
see
Like
a
Jeff R.
mixture.
Curry, like he's like gone crazy on Reddit
Yeah.
over like the last 6 months. These crowd work guys, I don't know, like
Yeah.
if they've just gamed the Reddit algorithm or something to like to
Yeah.
get that exposure.
Well, you'll
but
you'll
it
have
seems like people are really gravitating toward the crowd work guys lately.
yeah, when you'll have like an Adam Ray who's got the mixture, he'll usually like end his show with some crowd work or something. You know, he'll have the jokes or something like that. But it's like now it's like almost a that's their art, is just to go in. And then also some guys will do it just to practice, like just to keep fresh and keep their mind witty, and it helps. Or maybe they don't have really anything new they're working on, so it's like I'm just gonna go out here and. Or if they're
riff.
established and it's like this is my kind of crowd, so I'm just going to go out here and riff with them, and so it's interesting in that form with comedy. Is that, I mean, today it's so much easier to be exposed in comedy because you have like YouTube, you have your own, you're in your own control of your marketing and things with social media and stuff like that.
Well, to a point, I've got dinged a lot on. I've got the old.
Really? Yeah, they say get a little bit of censorship.
Instagram's got me a lot.
Placement,
TikTok. I mean, I've had so many like videos just like they just take out all my words, and it's like just me up there in silence. Like it's getting better for sure.
Yeah.
But like
Yeah.
YouTube's been, knock on wood, has been the only one that hasn't really flagged me yet.
That's surprising.
Yeah,
They say
well-
that's a fairly restrictive platform.
I know. Of all ones, I thought for sure YouTube would be the one, but like Instagram's been the worst about it.
Yeah, well,
Strange.
and YouTube's really strange because you'll find people like literally doing cons, like con men.
Yeah.
Like it's obvious that this is a con, but it doesn't get flagged, you know. And then or you'll
It's a
see,
weird
yeah,
system
you'll
out
see
there with that.
somebody abusing animals and stuff. I was like, why is this on here? And then you'll see
Oh, yeah.
somewhere where like it's just a dark joke.
I
and it just
wonder. I mean, you see that now, and I mean, obviously, social media is a huge presence in everybody's life now, and in like entrepreneurs and comedians especially. Do you think having that social media play a presence in increasing your exposure is more of a pro versus like the old comics who kind of had to hit the road and do these small towns and do that? Like what is your sense there?
I think it's definitely a pro. I mean, like, look, I'm like, you guys found me. Like, that would never have
Right.
happened until like you work your way up through the club system. I mean, it
Sure.
is nice that you can go beyond the gatekeepers.
Right.
Like, that's not really a thing anymore.
Sure.
I mean, there are obviously cons to like it going online a lot now, and the fact that like someone who's really not that good
Right.
like gets a random clip to blow up, and all of a sudden they're getting like all these bookings, and it's like,
yeah.
or like a thing I've noticed that shows a lot is comedians won't really. There's some comedians who will go to a show and just be looking for that crowd work clip and
Yeah.
not like trying to perform, like make
Not
this
doing
a
a
show for the
set,
crowd. They're just looking for a clip. And I
not
think that
to
kind of takes
sharpen.
away from the art. It's like
Yeah.
you're like hunting for something instead of like providing entertainment for these people, kind of thing.
That's a good
Yeah,
perspective.
Yeah, that is really because you're yeah. I didn't even think of that because you're right because it seems like there are a lot of people who are just trying to get followers so then they can get ticket sales and then because then you have a club will bring you on because look how much ticket sale like opportunity of ticket sales I have.
Right. They see the follower
And
count and
it's-
they try to
it's-
translate that into X.
Yeah, and it's not about the jokes. It's not about the performance. It's not about the art at all. It's just
Right.
like I just need to get some butts in the seats, and then these people will give me a chance to be on stage, and I'll go up and hack it all the way through, still make good money, and I'll move on.
Right. Yeah. That was the one thing I didn't realize about comedy, and maybe you can expand upon this a little bit. When I lived in Los Angeles, I moved back. I left Los Angeles right before COVID hit. I left December 2020. Like right before COVID blew up, I left Los Angeles. And that year I had stayed out there previously. One of my good friends, Mike, out there, had been working in the comedy circuit. He worked for a small outfit called Golden Artists out there and was doing some bookings on a small scale out in Los Angeles. And like I got a more sense of the inner workings of how not your Dave Chappelle's, your Bill Burr's, your headlining comics, how the kind of sausage gets made, so to speak. And I didn't realize that a lot of the comics out in Los Angeles have to go and pay to get on bills at certain clubs, and or there's no expectation of pay when they go and perform at certain clubs. Right. They just kind of have to take whatever spots they can get or pay the gatekeepers, like you said, to get this exposure. And that was incredibly surprising to me. I was like, you're providing a service, they're selling tickets at their club or whatever. I would think there would be some exchange of services or compensation there, and that just wasn't the case at all in like 90% of the cases. And I was like, that's incredible. Why is it that way?
Well, yeah, it's like it's like so there's like called bringer shows where like a smaller club, or a lot of clubs actually, like the Hollywood Improv, Comedy Store don't do it, Laugh Factory doesn't do it, the three big ones.
Right.
But there are like shows at like smaller clubs that will do like bringer shows where you have to like bring like 2 to 5 people for the show kind of thing. So then you get like stage time for that, but you don't get paid. Yeah, and I mean, even out here, like open mics, you have to pay $5 to perform at.
Really? So you do have to even pay out there. That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, have you ever had to do any, like, I think they call it calling, where you go out and on the street?
Oh, barking?
Barking, that's what it's called.
I mean, I run a show, so like I do that for my own show. I've never done it for like another show. Because the bringer shows, you kind of they're just like, hey, bring 3 to 5 people.
Right.
And that's normally what it is. Which they're the worst shows ever. I had one of my worst sets ever in front of like all my friends and stuff.
Really?
Then they're talking to you afterwards. Maybe this isn't what you should do, Jim. It's like, no, man, it's just an off night.
Yeah.
Oh, it was beyond an off night. It was, I died on stage that night. That was that was the roughest set.
I've got to wonder, you say it's like the best drug ever, getting the laughs and getting on stage, but when you bomb, like, is it comparably bad? Like, is it just like my soul
Oh,
is
it's
ripped
worse.
from my
It's like
body?
you literally are like, I will walk into oncoming traffic right now. I want to end this
Yeah,
shit. Like,
like,
I
turn it
remember, so this
off,
show
I'm
I was talking
dying.
about, the Bringer show, I was pretty fresh into comedy. So like,
Sure.
I could write funny, but like my stage presence wasn't there. Like I
Mhm.
wasn't fully there.
Mhm.
And I only had to bring two people to the show. So I tell my brother and his girlfriend to come. And then
Mhm.
they offhandedly mention it to our other friends. And they're like, oh, we'll come. And then they end up
Sure.
like bringing about like 10 people.
Okay.
And and yeah, so they, and like right before that show, like this girl I was into, like she kind of broke things off. So I'm like in this horrible headspace going
Right.
in.
Okay.
And then I see all my friends sitting front row, and I'm like, oh, why? Like, if you're
Why are
gonna
you
like,
here? Oh no.
seeing your friends on stage is always awkward, especially early on, and
Yes.
especially with the type of humor I do. Like early, it's
Yes.
like they don't realize it until like I'm on stage. And then like the booker people were like, hey, you brought so many people, you can do extra time tonight. So I'm like, okay, cool. So I go up there, and when I tell you, I didn't even get a chuckle, not even from my friends, for almost the entire set until I said, this is going horribly for me. And then the crowd erupts in laughter.
And they're like,
I remember
yes,
being
you're
up there like,
correct.
I might have to quit. Like, this was the worst night of my life. Like, I remember walking off like, I don't think I could do this anymore.
Oh my gosh, dude, I could not imagine, dude.
Yeah, that'd be rough. Yeah, because you do really good with your cadence and your timing.
Yeah, that's what I noticed when I was watching your shorts and reels over the last few
Yeah,
days as well. Your
and I-
delivery is very distinct.
Yeah,
you have a good. You're good at the pregnant pause.
Yeah, you do a really good job at all, especially because I mean you have going back and look at some of the big ones like Chappelle. He's a very good writer. He's a good performer, but he also has that unique voice that kind of adds to him. Cat
Yeah.
Williams is the same way.
Sure.
Uh, 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 Sam Kinison was the same way. So you got to have these extra. So what I like about what you have is that you'll sometimes end your punchlines and the last like word, your tone kind of goes up, and then there's
Yeah.
that pause. So it's like there's a lot of this backwardsness to your cadence stuff, and I really like it. I think it's unique,
Thank you.
and I think it adds, and especially for this style, and finding out you've only been doing this for 3 years?
Yeah, not a
like
long
3 to 4
time.
years.
I was surprised
You
too.
picked a very hard, because sometimes comedians kind of have to go and try different styles and find out. It's the same as like WWE wrestlers. You gotta
Right.
you gotta find who you are and
Sure,
your niche
sure.
and stuff. I mean, we saw George Carlin go from jokes to political ranting, but
Yeah.
still found that humor in him. So there's always this evolution, but it's like you immediately came out and was like, I'm going to go after the hardest style and do it in the
tough.
trickiest way, and I admire that. I think it's ballsy, and I think you've done a great job in such a short period of time.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, the way I always saw it, because I always had like I always loved the jokes where it's like witty, but it's fucked up, but like the person still laughs at it.
Yes.
So that's like always how that's how my dad was. So
Mhm.
he used to say jokes growing up where you're like, God damn, that's so fucked up. But like he said it in a way where it's like, it wasn't like, I don't like shock value humor. I
Right.
like the like,
Right.
where it's like kind of a little, like there's a smartness to it.
Yeah.
The joke's
Mhm.
still there.
Yeah, so,
like I
but
was
like
saying
my
earlier.
cadence and
Finding that
stuff, that's how
line.
I write. So like whenever I write out the joke, I'm like saying it out loud. So that's like I do it along with the pause. That's how I'm like it's
Sure.
Yeah.
together kind of thing.
when
That's
you
interesting.
leave like the slight grin sometimes, and
Yeah.
like Jesselnick talked about when he first started, one of the things he had to like make sure is that once he got off stage, he's a super nice and easygoing
Right,
guy.
yeah.
So like, because people would just get sold on this, and he's like, no, that's a character I'm
Right,
doing.
right.
He's like, he said it's easier to be an asshole on stage and nice off stage than be an asshole off stage and nicer on stage. He's like, I'd rather my fakeness be an asshole and then my realness be this
Sure.
person who's I'm just a regular guy,
Mhm.
And but yeah, and even Jesselnick, I think with those kind of like that kind of dark humor, you kind of have to understand that some of the things you're saying needs that slight little grin at the end to kind of remind people where we're at. Like
Yeah.
we're still joking.
This
And,
is a joke.
yeah, like we're still joking. I mean,
That's what I personally like about dark humor and dark humor comedians such as yourself is finding that line.
writing that line.
Finding the line. You may step over it at times. That's going to happen. But, I mean, that's why I think comedy is so integral to society is you find that line where you like, you can tell a joke and you're like, oh, wait,
Yeah.
am I allowed to laugh at that?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, I'll laugh at that. Finding that line and having people's brains have to kind of reconcile that in real time, I think is incredibly
Yeah.
important in society.
Yeah. Jimmy Carr and Jeselnik both will take advantage of that too. Like if the laugh's kind of late and they'll be like, "Are you with me now?" or something like that. It's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I thought you were a cooler crowd," or something
Right.
like that, you know, to kind of
Exactly. Like that's the thing. Like you have to like I had to like that was a big learning curve. Is like when the joke doesn't land,
Mm-hmm.
like making sure that they still know that you're like I'll always say like, oh, I found your guys' line.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go cross it again.
Yeah,
You guys
for
ready?
sure.
Like that type of shit where you just like you address it. It's like, okay, hey, like this is what it is.
Right.
There's no other plan B up here. Like this is all I got. Like
Exactly.
so you guys are
You're
like I
here
don't
for the
care.
ride,
Like
man.
I'm still gonna. I always say like I'm still gonna have fun whether you guys laugh at these or not.
Right.
Yeah.
And then like, they're like into it kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
they,
Yeah.
for the most part.
or it's
For
like
sure.
or it's like now you're offended. You weren't offended at the 3 rape jokes I did. You
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
Now you're
that
offended.
happens all the time.
Yeah.
That's
Like,
gotta
there'll
be
a random
strange
joke
as
in the set
well,
that they
I
like
was
pull back on.
thinking,
It's like
yeah.
what? Like
I
you
was
literally
always
just
wondered about strange crowds, especially with dark humor crowds. Like you could tell, you know, 3 rape jokes or whatever, but as soon as you tell like an abortion or a racist joke or something, the
religious
crowd
or
just
something.
goes insanely the other direction. I mean,
Yeah.
that's got to be really weird to try to suss out.
oh yeah, that's yeah. You like there'll be random times, random jokes. I mean, the jokes that I found the most probably are like dead dog jokes.
Yeah.
Oh,
People
really?
they're not fans of the dead dog jokes, but like I keep doing them just to fucking
Yeah. Well, that's that perfect thing where it's like 99% of people can relate because we've all had
Everybody's
dogs
lost a
passed
pet.
away, and
Everybody's
it's a painful
lost a pet,
thing.
yeah.
So I've never been raped, so like I can kind of hear a rape joke and be like, oh, I can find the humor in that because I've never had to live that trauma, but like I've lived the trauma of having to bury a dog, so it's kind of like
Yeah, we all
much
have,
more
yeah.
personal.
but
for
also we
sure.
also as a crowd we have to understand we're all in the I mean Mark Norman always just yells comedy when he says something he knows that people are like shook by. He'll just be like comedy.
Yeah.
But it's that wittiness too though. The joke is still there. The funniness is still there. It's just you have to be able as a crowd and as a audience member, you have to be able to let go of all of that and just let yourself laugh and find the humor and everything.
yeah. School shooter jokes also one people
Yeah.
always go back
Yeah,
on.
A lot of
those-
big feelings about those, I'm sure.
I mean, that is a very speaking of finding that line, like that's one of those lines where it's like, but once you find, because there have been some really good jokes. I mean, even Shane Gillis said it. He goes, "Hey, he's like, even in all tragedies, there's still the funniest tragedy. Like
Yeah.
every school shooter, there's still one that's the funniest.
Yeah.
You know, it's not that it's funny; it's just the funniest out of all. You know, and it's like, but that's the beauty of comedians, and I think that's why they're so important in our society is that you're able to always find when things could be totally awful, there's still a joke, there's still something funny, there's still something good about all this, and you guys have always been able to push those lines and find that, and that's why I'm such a huge fan
Oh,
of
yeah.
comedy, and I think
Well, that's the thing.
comedians
Like
are
that's how I
important.
know. Like like every time I see like celebrity deaths or like big news story, like my brain doesn't go to the empathy. It goes to like oh, like just rattling off jokes in my head at like
Right.
while everyone else is sad at something. Like I'm just like oh, don't.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, we can compare two different. So you have, I would probably, speaking of favorites or funniest, I would say you probably have my favorite Kobe death jokes, and it's not just a joke. You hit it with you just keep drilling it in with different
Different
punchlines
punchlines.
compared to like what Ari Shaffir did. You know, like Ari Shaffir's joke, I was like, I see yeah. But
Yeah.
then with his personality, you're like, Ari does have like this ranting style personality.
Right.
So when you don't hear him say it and you're just reading it, you're just kind of like, that's rough,
harsh.
Ari. That's
That's
rough,
harsh.
you know?
Yeah.
But then
Little harsh.
you see and you hear yours and you're just like, you laugh at the first one and then you like seconds later have another one that's still based on the same thing, just a different kind of topic,
A
in a
chain
sense.
of
Yeah, and
jokes,
it's just
yeah.
like, oh shit. By the end of it, you're just like, Jesus Christ, like,
yeah,
that is-
everybody at the end
yeah.
is laughing, but they're like, oh, I
Yeah.
started laughing, now I can't
Yeah.
stop. Uh-oh.
Yeah, but the series of Kobe jokes that you posted on your Instagram, I think,
Yeah. Well, that's actually one of my save. Like we were talking about, like saves. If
Yeah.
a joke doesn't land, I'll be like, "Oh, that didn't land, Kobe."
yeah,
And then
yeah,
and they're just so shocked that I'd like do that every time. Like,
Yeah.
they're like,
yeah. It's just, but that's that line of just darkness, but you know, yeah, I think that Kobe joke was probably like the second or third like video that I came across on yours.
oh, really?
And that's when I was like, okay, yeah, this guy, that's his style.
And doing it in LA, let me tell you, it's very hit or
Ooh,
miss.
yeah.
That's what I was gonna say. A lot of Laker fans in LA, man. They
Yeah.
got big feels about.
Well, that's what
Kobe
I
out
always
there.
say to them. I'm like, all right, like, who would really appreciate me taking an ill-advised joke shot? Like the same guy who took an ill-advised shot against a triple team. So
Yeah.
basically, I am the white mamba up here.
That's right.
Like I keep going, and I'm like, who had the like most missed shots in an NBA career? Kobe. Nobody remembered for his makes,
Yeah.
just like me.
Yeah.
Chucker.
So with venue wise, are you in just the LA area, or do you?
Yeah,
or
I
do you
live
do
in
tours
I'm
and
like
stuff?
in Culver City area in LA. So
Okay,
yeah,
and
I'm
you're just
right in the
you're just
thick of it.
performing up there for now. You're not doing anything tour wise or anything like
I'm
that.
trying to get on the road more this year. I think I'm going to be going to Austin and New York. Still planning, like finalizing those, but yeah, I'm still working my way up that ladder. And
Yeah.
like we said earlier, like you got to get those followings to get like in the clubs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Helps, like to kind of travel.
Do you have like an agency and stuff you work with and things like that?
No, not at all. Like it's all self. Like at the beginning, it's like when you're early on, like me, like it's all self kind of starter stuff.
Mhm.
Like you gotta do your own shit or
Gotta
go on
grind
the
it.
road with people who
Yeah.
have more of a following kind of thing.
Yeah, it's such a
Nice.
grind. Are you still writing like script writing and stuff like that on the side?
Yeah,
Or-
yeah, I do. Yeah, I still write script writing. I mean, the main focus is obviously comedy these days, but yeah, I do actually have something. Yeah, I'm still working
Nice.
on an animated series right now that
Oh, sweet.
I think will be it's edgy. So
Oh, nice.
Nice.
Yeah, and that's especially with animation.
Adult comedies come
Yeah, animation.
miles in the last few years.
I mean, from when we were younger. I mean, nightly when we were living together in Bloomington, we watched Adult Swim,
Yeah.
and at that time it was just start because I mean, Aqua Teen was big, C Lab,
yeah, like
and
Tom
it's-
Goes the Mayor,
Tom Goes the
Birdman,
Mayor,
like all
and
those old,
and
like,
a lot of
adult
it
comedies.
wasn't real edgy at that time, but it was weird and
It was
totally
weird.
different.
Yeah.
and then every now and then they would hit you with a line or a joke where you're just like, oh, geez, like that's a
Yeah,
little.
It started
dark, you know?
getting a lot darker and edgier as we got older. Like they started doing like moral oral and stuff
Yeah,
like
more
that,
oral,
which was like
where it'd be like
wild
real
as hell.
dark, and then now
Yeah.
they've got the dog that's a demon.
Oh, yeah, what
that
is-
looks after the kid
Pickles
who's
or
a
Mr.
Pickles,
or
Mr.
what-
Pickles.
Yeah, that's wild. As hell.
Then of course like Rick and Morty, which Rick
Sure.
and Morty's not super dark, but I mean there's moments where it can go kind of
Pretty-
ridiculously
pretty
dark,
dark.
but good. You know, the joke's always there. So yeah, I think animation, I mean, is a really good place for that. And I think with the way animation's changing, and then with AI and all that, the AI art and all that that's coming along,
That
like
shit's wild.
they're being able to do a lot of stuff with that.
Do you use any
That's
AI
wild.
for your comedy or anything?
I'm sorry.
Do you use any AI for your comedy or anything? Or is there like, have you seen or heard of any comedians using like AI to like help them write jokes or anything? Is that like anything that you've heard?
I've heard some offhandedly mention, like if I need a joke topic, like I go to AI. Like, I'm
That's
like, okay,
crazy,
like,
man.
I don't, but
Yeah.
that's like young, open. I don't know if
Sure, I don't even know.
I
how
haven't
to
used
say-
AI or anything. I
Me
don't know
either.
if people are doing that or
I
not.
don't know how to do that shit.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of them would admit it if they are.
Right,
Yeah.
that was gonna be my next.
I
thing,
mean,
is
because
that
I
they
mean,
would
there's
say-
so much. One of the big issues was joke thieving, and you know, or
Right.
like, and then it comes to the point too where it's like, there's that. Did they steal it, or is it a topic that's talked about, or it's obvious that's
Right.
talked about so much that everything kind of seems similar,
Sure,
you know?
sure.
So but yeah, I would sooner or later, I would think with the way some people just want shortcuts, and I mean, in comedy, it's such a grind at the beginning and stuff. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if people start, because I know music's getting into it. They're gonna start writing songs and stuff using AI, you know, to get lyrics and stuff. It's
Oh,
wild.
man.
Yeah,
want AI
I mean, I still to this day see people like straight up joke stealing.
Yeah.
I'm like, I literally heard the same exact joke from like Shane Gillis or Andrew Santino. I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, that's brutal.
Yeah.
and it's like verbatim.
Yeah, that's gotta be
it's
real
like
bad
don't copy
today.
my homework kind of thing,
Yeah.
or you can copy my
Oh,
homework,
it's-
just don't make it, But yeah, I mean, but a lot of those times we've seen it where the joke people who were accused of it then became pretty big,
Yeah, Amy
and
Schumer, Carlos
then
Mencia.
they get called out for it, but then it's too late. They've already made it.
They're too big.
They're
Yeah,
in
they've
it.
got their money.
And they're doing their own thing. Like Schumer's doing TV and stuff more than actually comedy anymore, And then you have on the other end, you have like with Robin Williams, they would say Robin Williams would steal jokes, but he wasn't like a thief. What it was that he would
riff off of them.
or he'd see him in an interview or whatever, and his more focus was on killing in that interview than like any sort of moral. So like he'd say a joke because I mean he was always go 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 go, and he was just off the wall kind of stuff. So a lot of times it wasn't that he was intentionally using something to steal it. He was just trying to kill and keep that energy going, and it was whatever came to his mind. Oh, he heard this joke the other day that was really funny, so he uses it. And then you'll have guys that will use it they'll steal them and as a joke. They'll obviously let you know that it's a stolen joke. What is his name? Glassman. Rick Glassman did that where he cut a video of his podcast, and I forget the comedian's name, and he says like a joke he's working on, and Glassman like takes his phone and like whispers in it, and then it cuts to him that night on stage, and he's like using that exact same joke, and then of course it's all fixed because the crowd's like overhyping it and excited, and he's up there like with his hands up and like a Jesus Christ pose, like he made it, So there's like this joke thing with it. So I mean, it obviously is a thing that goes on a lot with the comedy world, and then whether it's intentional or accidental.
Yeah, see, I'm lucky on that front because like mine would be kind of tough to steal for
Yeah.
most like it would be weird if
Right.
they did a joke like in my kind of case, like
Yeah,
how to know
it would be very distinct. You would be able to point that out very
Yeah.
quickly.
yeah,
And it's not going to fit everybody's style. You're not going to have,
no, exactly.
it's like you're going to have some clean comedian all of a sudden in the middle of their set do one of your jokes and it kind of be like, oh, that's out of place, So
I saw in one of your videos as well, you had big feelings about pop.
Yeah, I do. I'm a pop believer.
Yeah, it's all about pop. That was one of our topics on a previous episode. Is like we were talking about Midwestern things and where it was. I think everybody used to call it. It was definitely pop when we were younger here in Southern Indiana, but now it's soda.
It's moved to soda. You hear soda more.
Yeah, everybody's soda now.
Wow,
But it was
shifted over there, really? See,
Yeah.
I'm from Pittsburgh, and they're still saying pop over there.
yeah.
And then you'll get the soda pop where they just take it all.
Yeah,
just
they
put
get
it all
it both,
together.
man.
And I think that's I think that's even more southern. But we did have that talk on with the
Are you guys
Midwest
pop?
lingo.
You guys say pop, or are you?
Soda now.
Yeah,
Soda
I
now.
do a little bit of both.
Pop when I was younger.
Like I'm gonna grab a pop, or it's like, you have any soda? Like it kind of depends for me. It's like what the situation is. If I'm asking for one, or if I'm saying I'm going to go grab one.
Weirdo Midwesterners. Man.
Yeah.
We don't know what we want.
No, we don't know shit. Like our lingo, like we're all dumb. Like we just say whatever. Like creek, crick. Like it's like we'll say both when we just for no reason. We use all of them. We don't really stand for anything. I guess you could say.
You find yourself fortunate to be staying in LA, and obviously with the it's pretty much the heart of the comedy scene there. So, I mean, you feel pretty fortunate to be in that position.
No, I mean, I obviously, like every comedian, you think about you debate Austin, New York. I just don't want to do the winter. I just don't think I can live in a city that like
that cold. Even though you're from Pittsburgh, it's plenty cold in Pittsburgh, I'm sure.
I know. Well, that's the reason. I got out of Pittsburgh. I went to Miami, and then I went to LA, and I was like, I can't do that. Like,
I was the same way, man. I lived in Austin for about 7 years after I left Chicago, and then I lived in LA for a year. But I didn't really like LA, unfortunately. I lived in Chicago, I lived in Austin, both big cities, both great cities. I did not like Los Angeles as a city.
Yeah, LA is rough. I mean, I'm not the huge
Brutal.
There's perks, and then especially after the pandemic, it got way worse out here.
That's
like
what my buddy Mike, who's still out there, says. It was just like crazy out there.
Yeah, it got rough,
Yeah.
and I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan of LA, but like the comedy scene is out here kind of
Yes.
thing. It's like even Austin, it's just not big enough. Like LA, there's 10 million people in LA County alone.
right.
And,
Like,
Austin's
you just have
3
so
million
many
total. So it's like
opportunities,
there's just so much. Like the big clubs are out here and all this type of stuff. So it's just
the whole
I think
network.
Austin, from what I've heard from other comedians, it kind of got oversaturated very fast, and there's
Yeah.
just not enough like like people and clubs to like
Right.
keep up because
Right.
everybody's going to Rogan's, and so
Right.
unless you're in Rogan's,
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
Well, and LA is kind of the headquarters, like you said. It's the typical story. Jumped in your car, ran to LA, and then you have like, well, Boston. A lot of the Boston comedy, they go to New York, but then New York becomes nothing but Boston and New York
Right.
comedians, and it's really hard. It's because it is a total different style of comedy too, so it's harder for they. A lot of guys will say it's harder for them to go start in New York than to start in like LA, because New York it has this small established, almost like circle. And it's a
think
different
you see
style.
that in a lot of the
and-
regions, like a lot of around the big cities. They've all got kind of their local guys who have a significant local following. They may not have gone national or may have a small national presence through social media, but they're really just kind of hanging around their local clubs and stuff and hitting those circuits. I think you're seeing a lot more of those guys get that exposure nowadays through the social media, kind of those regional comics.
Yeah.
And I think once you kind of hit that certain tier kind of in your region, you really have an exponentially greater chance of getting that national exposure. And you're seeing a lot more avenues for comedians, at least for me. I mean, you see a lot of, obviously, with the Instagram, the YouTube, the Reels and stuff are very popular for comedians to get that exposure. But I feel like the ability to get like features now is way more available. You see like Netflix is doing tons of features, the hour-long shows. Amazon does them. I mean, there's a million streaming sites out there. They all need content now. And I just feel like I've seen a million zillion new comedian specials come out in like the last 5 years. I feel like there's so much more exposure for that. Am I right, or am I
oh,
just
100%. Yeah, like
imagining
comedy's
things?
going through its boom, like a second boom here.
Mm.
Like Jimmy Carr was kind of, when he was on a podcast, I think it was on Rogan, and he was like kind of comparing it to the like 60s 70s rock boom,
Okay.
like that era. He's like he was saying that like comedy's going through that right now, because like there was the early people like the Pryors and the Kennisons,
Sure.
and then now it's like this next generation who kind of learned from those people to kind of
Right.
like take it to the next
Right.
level of comedy kind of thing. Because like, I mean, like comedy talent wise, like there's just way more people doing it than those era of like Pryor and all that.
Right.
Like, it's just a whole
Right.
different like,
There
because
were-
like you said, because of social media, in your hometown you can still do it. You blow up on your like Instagram reel, then all of a sudden like, hey, you can make the move to Texas or Austin or LA
Yeah.
Right.
after that.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, it used to be HBO. Like that was the only person
you did
giving
that
you out.
HBO, you get that
Or-
30-minute special, and
yeah.
you would hit it.
Or you had to make it on one of the talk shows. You had to get on
Right.
a late night show. That's when you made it. And
Right.
now it's like, I mean, you
One
you
clip.
really don't know when you made it. You know when you
Sure.
maybe gone a viral or you done something like that. I mean,
Mhm.
Matt Rife blew up, and then he had a kind of a hard fall here
Sure,
recently. I mean, he's
sure.
going to be fine, but like
Yeah.
you go through these ups and downs. So it's like, sure, you might be doing well for a year or so, but then like that fall off can happen, and then you got to find a way back into it, things like that. But I think today, I mean, you're seeing a lot of comedians put out their own specials. I mean,
Right.
Bert Kreischer's producing guys. I mean, he did Shane Torres. He did his special. So you got a lot of guys that, and I think that's the reason we're seeing a bigger boom too, is that a lot of the guys who are established are helping out
Right.
a lot more, are using their power because
Yeah.
they're not necessarily tied down to a gatekeeper or to somebody or an agency. They're their own thing. So it's like, well, I made it. I don't really have much else to prove, so let's help some of these other guys that I really like. And because I've seen some comedians where I see their special and it's like, it's not really that funny. It's not bad.
Right.
It's just not my kind of humor.
Right.
But it's like, but as a human, they really impressed Bert Kreischer or Tom Segura or
Sure.
somebody big to where they're like, yeah, we'll help you. We like you.
Right.
And it's more of that. Like, you don't have to be the funniest guy on the planet, but you're a good guy. We like you. Let's help you, kind of thing. So I
Yeah.
think there is a
Oh,
lot
100%.
more like that.
I also
with
noticed
just
like,
networking.
I don't know, there's a difference between, at least from what I've noticed, like special comic, like the comics who do specials versus like a club comic.
Right.
Yeah.
Like there's certain comics who are just so much funnier in the club, but then they do their special and it just doesn't fully translate, I feel
Right.
like, to how funny they are like in the club.
It's very apples and oranges, clubs versus specials. You're right. There is a very
Yeah, like Theo
distinct...
Vaughn, like I love Theo Vaughn. I think he's one of the funniest people on the planet.
Yeah.
But like him in a club versus like his special, it's like night and day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I
Like
think a
doing
lot of
club,
comedians.
your sides will hurt.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think a lot of comedians too. They get to the point where they start getting and doing like bigger theaters and stadiums, and then they miss the club. Like it's
They
like,
like
a
the
lot of them you'll
intimate
hear. Yeah, you'll hear them.
settings,
It's like, man, I just really would like to do a club, you know. And then you
Yeah.
get them popping up out of nowhere. It's like they're going to work on some new stuff, and it's like, hey, you're sorry, you're getting bumped because so and so's here that the night and they want to
Right.
just do a club show, you know, because it's a totally different feel, is what they say, you know. It's in,
Right.
like, excuse me. You get into the theaters and stuff. A lot of the guys say they walk out and they can't see anything because of the lights and everything,
Right.
and it's just like you're just kind of talking out into the void.
Sure.
And then in a club, you can look and see every single person's face, you know, and it's like this more intimate kind of feeling. And then
Yeah, and
you'll-
as well, like whenever they're at the theater, like it's all their fans, so there are
Yeah.
like it's already built in. Like they're gonna laugh at pretty much everything.
Right.
Like a club, like that's where you learn. Like they're there to see a multiple array of they might not even know who you are.
right,
Sure.
yeah,
So like, you get a like true sense of like, oh, is this really funny or not?
Right. Right. Yeah.
yeah, that. And then BJ, we talked on an episode recently. He did one of his first theater shows, and then that same weekend he went and did a black room, and we were just talking about the challenge of doing a black room. No matter what race you are, it's just
Right.
that is just always a hard room, you know. And
They've
it's
got
like,
that whole culture behind like the Apollo Theater and
Right.
like being boisterous with their performances and whatever, and like letting you know as a performer where you stand
Yeah.
immediately.
and you have a short period of time to prove
Yeah, you
yourself.
gotta
or
get in
the
there
fuck
quick.
off, you know.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
so difficult.
Yeah, but yeah.
Those are my favorite rooms.
Is it you like? Yeah,
They're
Oh,
great.
I love it. It's
Yeah,
so fun.
because if you get them on your side, they've got to be the greatest
they're-
laughs.
Oh,
I mean,
it's like
black
the
people in
best. It's
general
like,
have the
oh.
best laughs of all
Yeah,
time.
Some of the funniest people too.
They're the hilarious. They're hilarious.
And they understand comedy, and it's one of those things where it's if they're on your side, you're good
You're
to go.
good.
You can't fuck up.
Good.
But the
No,
first 30 seconds or whatever,
But they will
you
also
ruin your career.
bury you
Yeah.
quickly, dude,
Yeah.
under a deluge
Yeah.
of booze and insults.
But it is like
beyond heckling. It's not
Yeah.
heckling. It's destruction.
But it is I mean, you hear a lot of comedians talk about like that's a challenge though. They like those rooms. They like
Right.
doing them every now and then because it's like, all right, I got some stuff. I'm on the kind of the fence of it, but I know where I can get it figured out.
Yeah.
At. It'll
I got
be
that kind of
a black
vibe from watching some of Jimmy's reels as well, as like you kind of embraced the hecklers at times, you know.
Yeah.
When you're doing dark humor, you know you're going to get reactions, you know people are probably going to be upset with a joke here or there, and you kind of really seem to look for that and engage with that
The drunk-
directly.
the drunk bachelorette party that
Sure,
just showed up, and you're like,
sure.
oh, here we go.
Yeah, so I enjoyed that as well. So I mean, if you're gonna, I like the fact that if you're gonna do the dark humor, you know you've got the reactions coming. You know you're probably gonna get heckled and get reactions. The fact that you immediately address it and go straight forward towards it, I enjoyed that personally.
Yeah, I mean the nice thing about like for me is like I'm like my all my jokes like I'm an asshole in it. So like whenever I get heckled, I'm allowed to like be an asshole to these
Right,
guys. Like I'm not
exactly.
changing anything.
You set
like
the
I feel like other
expectation.
comics like they kind of have to like make sure they don't lose the whole room
Oh,
with
yeah.
a heckler
Right,
and like make sure it's funny. Like I can just like be straight up like
Yeah.
like just try to destroy them.
I like that.
Do you do you write for hecklers? Like, do you have like stuff set up for certain situations like that, just so you can get it out and then keep moving? Because sometimes,
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's more like you just
Scenario
like,
it.
as long as like you're getting like you'll like once you experience it once, like you're like, oh, I could have said this or that, and like let me keep that in my back pocket for next
Right.
time. Or you may think of something on the spot where it's like, oh, I'm gonna use that every time, like I have. So it's kind of like I don't really write it beforehand. I might think of something like, oh, if a heckler ever says something, I'll like say this.
Mm-hmm.
But like in the moment, like you kind of just write it on stage. It's like, okay, like it's like fight or flight. It's like I can't let this guy pass me
Right.
over, or like I'm gonna lose the crowd.
Yeah.
Sure.
because I've seen a lot of situations with hecklers where a comedian will interact with a heckler, but everything they say, you're like, you hear it and you're like, oh, they could have. That's like universal. They could use that what they're saying right now. They could use it any situation, not
Right.
just this one. So it's like this. So it almost always made me think that like maybe they they'll write certain jokes and then they can hear the complaints that would come with that punchline or whatever. It's like, all right, well, here's a little some side stuff here if somebody wants to complain or not, or if that joke doesn't land, here's where I go with that next or whatever. If it does land, I'll go this way with it, kind of
There's
thing.
a whole science to it that I didn't realize. I mean, like, again, when I've always enjoyed comedy, and, you know, I've watched it and listened to it for a very long time, most of my life. But until I lived in Los Angeles and was with my good buddy Mike, and, like, again, how I kind of saw the sausage made, I didn't realize how much of a science it was, you know, and, like, the variation of style, that wasn't really something I paid attention to. The variation of content that people do, delivery, cadence, volume, inflection, like,
Spacing,
the science
timing.
of it is just, it was baffling to me when I really kind of, like, thought about it critically. And it gave me the utmost respect for comedians, for not just having the balls to get up on stage and do it, which is the first biggest hurdle for most people.
Yeah,
You know,
to be the
getting on
clown.
stage and being vulnerable, you know, and getting over that hurdle, and then to just, like, get into the science of it. It was overwhelming as shit to me, because I always thought of myself as a pretty funny person, and Mike would always be like, when I was out there, you should get up at one of these improv on these open nights, and I'm just like, no fucking way in hell, dude.
Yeah.
No chance.
Well, and I grew up with watching and listening to Carlin, Kinnison, and so you would hear like that stuff, and I never noticed the science or the art to it until I got a little older and started getting into Mitch Hedberg, and then because then you get into an actual joke writer, and then you realize, like, oh, they're all doing their kind of they're all telling jokes, but they're all different styles of jokes.
Right.
Like Hedberg was literally a joke writer. It was joke, no story, no build up, no breakdown. And then, but yeah, when I started really listening to Mitch was when I realized, like, oh, there is like an art, because every single punchline he had the same spacing, the same timing, the same delivery, and it is like it fell into this thing. And then I started reading books on him, or seeing things about him and how he would write, and when he would talk about how his writing process was, and it's like, it's a very similar thing. He carried a big book around with him, and if he saw something, he'd be like, hey, there's a joke in something like that, and he would just start writing random stuff down, and then he would finally put the joke together. And it's like,
How's your process for creating content? Are you kind of like an observational guy who carries a tablet or like takes notes on your phone, or do you just kind of sit down and have sessions to try to grind? Or...
Well, so like every morning I'll like right when I wake up, I'll write for an hour and a half, 2 hours, just like every single day.
Nice.
So like I have that like pretty like based in every day.
Mm-hmm.
But then like just throughout the day, if like you think of something,
Mm-hmm.
middle of my girlfriend talking about her work stories, I'll be like, oh, I'll think of something where I'm not paying attention to her.
Sure.
And then I'll write it in my notes pad. Like on the notes on my phone is like, I that's a good thing about having the phone. It's just like, just type it in there, or like just an idea, I'll just type it down and then I'll come back to it later, kind of thing.
Yeah. I do that all the time. You see that for a lot of creatives. Like when I would go to the shows as well, you'd always see when the people are trying out new content, they'd have their notebook or their phone, and they'd be like reading off. I'd be like, I got some new stuff I'm going to try out here. And they'd just be like kind of going through their notes and be like, why did I write down sexy goblin here? I don't know.
Yeah. Then you got to kind of think back. Well, I think that too with the comedy in LA. I mean, LA is a perfect melting pot for that. There's every kind of person, every kind of problem, every kind of scenario that humans have is in that city. So as long as you have that observation to kind of look around, there's a joke everywhere. And it's just, are you skilled enough to find that joke, you know? And I think that's probably a big reason why LA is the headquarters for comedy, you know? And then now it's switching over to Austin and stuff just because a lot of the LA comedians left, but it's still like LA, you know? And that's what's funny is like, we're going to go to Austin because we're going to change comedy. No, you're still LA comedy. You're all LA comedians, you know? It's still good. I enjoy it, but you're
doing
not
LA
changing
comedy in Austin.
Yeah.
Yes,
for the tax cuts, which hey, whatever.
Hey, I don't know.
Yeah, like whatever. Like I'm not mad about it. It's just don't make it have to be something it's really not, you know?
Right.
It's still all good and funny. So yeah, man, we'll let you go. probably got stuff to do. But I appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah,
It was-
thank you.
Yeah, I
for
appreciate you
coming
guys
on,
having
man.
me on. This was dope.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
man, I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun watching your reels over the past few days, man.
Oh
It was
yeah,
good
I
stuff.
appreciate that, man. I
yeah,
appreciate that.
it's awesome to see fresh, because I mean we do see so I mean my algorithm is a lot of comedy, and you see a lot of people, and it's like, you know, it's okay, it's funny, people are laughing and stuff, but it's very rare anymore that you come across somebody that I actually
Unique.
like and want to follow and want to actually reach out. I was like, because
Yeah.
I saw those and I was like, man, I'd really like to talk to him
Yeah, I
more
think our
and find
listeners will like your style as well.
and find more out about Jimmy. So, is there anything? We'll do some shameless plugging.
Yeah,
here.
shameless
Your
plug, man. You got
typical
anything going on?
podcast
Got any
stuff.
shows or any content you want to plug? Go for it.
Mostly, I mean, just follow along my YouTube, my Instagram, Jimmy Draxler. Yeah, I'm mostly doing show. I'm gonna be going to Austin, New York here, finalizing those dates actually pretty soon. But yeah, most of my stuff's in LA. So if you're out in LA, I have a weekly show every Thursday in West LA. Yeah.
Nice. We'll tell our buddy Mike
Yeah,
to
we'll
go
tell
check
Mike to
you
go
out.
get checked out.
He's big into that. I got a few people in LA. When you go to Austin too, let us know, because I lived
Yeah,
in
we-
Austin
Oh,
7
absolutely.
years.
Yeah.
I got
Oh,
a
yeah,
lot of
guys.
friends there. I'll tell them to go check you out.
And if you're ever coming in Indiana or coming through Indiana and want a couple shows or something like that, BJ hosts quite a bit of shows and stuff like that.
Oh, really?
So anything.
Oh, yeah, I definitely will. I definitely want
I'm
to.
losing my voice.
I actually was going to probably try to come to Indiana for the Steelers versus Colts game this year.
Oh,
Okay.
shit, yeah,
Yeah,
man,
if
I'm
you
a
do that,
Steelers
let us
fan,
know.
dude. Hell
'Cause,
yeah,
I
man.
mean, I'm a Colts fan. So
Yeah.
we can meet up some if you need tickets.
Oh,
I
yeah.
have connection on tickets and stuff too. So, but if you ever need any help with anything or coming through or whatever, just feel free to reach out to us and we'll do what we
Oh, yeah,
can do
guys,
to help
appreciate
you
that.
out.
If you're ever out in LA, hit me up.
We will.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, we'll
man.
definitely let too. And I mean, if you get to the point you want an agent or an agency or something like that too, we can try to help you with stuff like that too. But
Oh, thanks,
yeah,
guys.
feel
Really
free to
appreciate
reach
it.
out, and we'll reach back out here too later on and have you come back on. We'll update and find out what's new going on with you and stuff like
Oh, yeah.
that.
I'd
So,
love to do that.
yeah,
Oh, yeah, man.
we appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Thank
Take
you,
care.
guys. Have a good one.
Yeah, take care, bro.
See you.
Yep.